Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Colin Creaser. I am an OHS advisor here with Construction Safety Nova Scotia. We're going to have a webinar today talking about ergonomics and how we adjust or look at ergonomics during our COR audit process as well. So we're glad that you can join us today. We'll just give a quick moment here to let anybody else come in and join us. So just before we start off, again, as mentioned, my name is Colin Creaser. Definitely happy to have you in here with us today. We'll have a few slides to look over. We'll get into our introduction here in just a quick moment. Before we get into the content of our presentation, I'd just like to review some of the ways that you can interact with us as an organization. So Construction Safety Nova Scotia does have a 1-800 line and an office line as well. You can use those lines to give us a call, general questions, advice, any consultation work that we can help you out with. You can speak to any of our safety advisors, myself included. You can also book training with us. We do have a website. You'll find templates, toolbox talks, videos, mental health resources, posters that you can develop, download, print for yourself and your own organization as well. When you see Guide to OHS legislation, we do have an app that's available. You can find that on the Google Store. What this app does, it takes some of our safety requirements out of legislation and regulations, breaks that down in some more plain language for us, but also gives us a direct link to those regulations or those pieces out of legislation for you. Once that app is downloaded into your phone or your device, you don't need an active internet connection or Wi-Fi connection to use it. So the information is right in your phone. Great for any field level supervisors or anybody that may be working in remote areas that lose Wi-Fi internet connection every once in a while. We are also on all forms of social media. Our communications team does do a great job at getting information, initiatives, new training courses, updates to legislation out there. Not mandatory to follow us on any social media platforms, but we do recommend it. As mentioned, our communication team does get a lot of information out there on a regular basis. So what are we going to be talking about today? We'll have a quick introduction into Construction Safety Nova Scotia itself as an organization, myself, and we'll take a look at some principles and some basics of ergonomics. We'll take a look at our core requirements, or we should say our ergonomic requirements in a COR audit, specifically around our hazard assessment process, staying at work or return to work as well. We'll identify some of our ergonomic hazards that we'd like to see on those hazard assessments, or at least being mindful of these ergonomic hazards. We'll take a look at how our workforce, our managers, employees, workers can help be involved, participate, and implement our ergonomic programs as well. We'll take a look at some of the effective program benefits as well with proper ergonomic practices in our workplaces. For a quick introduction into Construction Safety Nova Scotia, we are a not-for-profit association that's dedicated over 30 years to improving occupational health and safety outcomes in the construction industry. Construction safety does provide training, mentoring, and safety resources. All companies with a current WCB account under the construction industry classification codes 4011, 4499, as well as 3551 are automatically members due to the levies that you pay into WCB. So what is COR itself? COR is a nationally recognized certificate. It is involved with auditing. There's internal and external auditing. Myself with construction safety I am an external auditor. So there is a chance that I've worked with you before. There's a chance that I will be working with you shortly. Again, please feel free to reach out to us at any time around COR requirements or around your COR auditing. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. But the certificate itself, so COR is Certificate of Recognition. As mentioned, this is a national standard, but it is an occupational safety and health accreditation program that verifies an effective and implemented safety management system which meets national standards. COR is frequently used as a pre-qualification or a condition of contract by public, private, municipal, and provincial project owners across Canada. When we look at ergonomics itself, so a direct definition of ergonomics is the interaction with machines, the surrounding environment, and tasks related to both. We could also say that ergonomics is our productivity, the efficient use of tools, equipment, infrastructure, and our workforces. The basic principle of ergonomics is work smarter, not harder. I know that sounds cliche, but at the end of the day, ergonomics is allowing us to work smarter, not harder. I'd like to just review some definitions with you before we get into more of our content. When we see the term MSI, RSI, I'm sure most of us are very familiar with that term, but MSI is going to directly result to our musculoskeletal injuries, and RSI directly will be our repetitive strain injuries. Both are caused from extended use or exertion of our muscles, tendons, joints, bones, etc. When we see the term cognitive ergonomics, this is something that I'm actually very interested in and passionate about. So when we see cognitive ergonomics, we're talking about the focus of human perception, our mental processing capabilities, and memory in those related tasks. I deliver a lot of training, and in some of these training classes, I often ask our students, what about cognitive ergonomics, or what does cognitive ergonomics mean to you? And one question I like to ask everybody is, why does green mean go? And every student will look at me like I'm trying to trick them, or it's a riddle. At the end of the day, green means go, because as a human society, as a human population, we have been trained, we understand that green means go. I like to think that anywhere in the world we go to, our traffic lights, green means go, yellow means caution, red means stop. So I associate that as our cognitive ergonomics, of course, with other things. When you see the term fatigue, this is going to be physical or psychological exhaustion, often reducing our performance or our ability to perform effectively. We also have TLV, or threshold limit value. This is our maximum average concentration and time spent in potentially hazardous tasks or areas. And then biomechanics. These are the forces that are put on and or generated in the body, and the effects of those forces on muscles, bones, tendons, etc. When we see the term upper extremity, this is going to be our shoulders, arms, hands, and our fingers. Our lower extremity is going to be our hips, thighs, knees, legs, ankles, and our feet. When we see the term posture, this is the position of our bodies when standing, sitting, or lying down. When we look at posture itself, we also want to associate our static postures or positions. So positions that we may be in for long periods of time that may not be normal or natural for us to be in. Posture is a direct result of our RSIs, repetitive strain injuries. When we see the term repetitive strain injuries, we think of those repetitive motions, and we're not wrong in thinking that. But our RSIs are also contributed to those static positions or postures that we may be doing on a regular basis. So for today's webinar, we are going to talk about some of our ergonomic requirements in a COR audit. Specifically, our hazard assessments. We'll take a little look at staying at work and return to work precautions as well later on in the presentation. When we look at the COR audit tool that is used, again, COR being a national standard, there is a tool, an audit instrument that we use as external auditors and that you'll use to do your internal audits as well. When we look at section 2, that is going to be our hazard assessment, analysis, and control. In section 2, this is our hazard assessment area. We are going to see a specific ergonomic question or criteria piece. So 2.5 specifically in the second section of our audit tool. Specifically, we're going to be looking for the identification of hazards regarding the ergonomic design, layout of work areas, machinery, equipment involved, and the appropriate processes or the applicable processes for those tasks. Now, if you are familiar with the COR audit tool, there are guidelines for all of the criteria questions as well. So an explanation of specifically what you should be looking for during that audit or what external auditors are looking for as well. So when we see 2.5, those guidelines are going to talk to us about the appropriate controls for the identification of our ergonomic hazards. Some of those controls are going to be our safe work practices, whether that be safe work practices, safe job procedures, or safe operating procedures. Work schedules, and of course, personal protective equipment. That's not our full list, but a good group of them. Again, the first piece of ergonomics you're going to see in the COR audit tool will be in section 2, hazard assessments 2.5, specifically asking us for the ergonomic design, layout of our work areas. Have we identified, documented our ergonomic hazards? Have we applied applicable controls for them? We're going to look at an example here shortly. Some of the hazards that we do want to see identified on these assessments or being aware of is the use of our tools. the vibration of those tools while they're in use, the use of other equipment, and our workplace layout. So what is the tool we're using? Is there any type of vibration with that tool? What other type of equipment is used during that whole process? And where are we using it? What is that workplace layout that we're using our equipment in? As well, we want to take a look at lighting. Do we have the appropriate amount of lighting? Is there any chance of overexposure to some of the elements or even lighting itself or lack thereof? Our screen time, our hot and cold temperatures as well, and those static positions, as mentioned, those stationary positions that we may do on a regular process that may not be normal to our body positioning. We have some other hazards that we want to identify. So our lifting equipment or lack thereof, is it manual or handling, or do we have other devices, other pieces of equipment that can help us? Our work pace, so the actual amount of work we're doing in periods of time. Our adjustment time as well, especially if that is a new task, a new process to us. If I've been doing a job or a part of my job scope is regularly standing, and now there's been a change that now I'm sitting on a more regular basis, has there been adjustment time for my body to get used to that new position, posture, or process? And then inadequate breaks as well. I think probably one of our biggest hazards that we do have in most industries is not taking an appropriate amount of breaks or giving our body that appropriate time to recover or break. As well, we see glare, shadows, sign pollution, and fatigue, as mentioned earlier. So with our glare, with our shadows, that is, of course, focusing a little more on our office administration work, glare on our computer screens, shadows from our screens. When we do talk about ergonomics, though, we're not just focusing on our office setups. Now, of course, that is a component, especially when we look at office ergonomics. But ergonomics itself is how humans interact with our equipment, with our immediate environments. When you see the term fatigue there, I want to just talk for a quick moment about that physical and that psychological fatigue. So, of course, the more energy we exert, that will physically tire us out. But we also have to be aware of our cognitive and that mental exertion, that psychological exertion as well. It's not just the physical activity that can wear us out a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about some of our signs and symptoms. But before I do that, I want to make a mention about self-care and active or post-care. Now, more often than not, myself included, I am guilty of this. I will associate self-care as, well, I'm starting to feel a little sore. Maybe I'll do a massage, or maybe I'll use some of my coverage that I have through insurance and that. Now, if I'm already starting to feel that pain, and then I go to a massage therapist to try to remedy that pain, the pain's already there. The injury's potentially already happened. I don't look at that as self-care. That's post. That's aftercare. Our self-care is getting ahead of those injuries, doing things to mitigate before we start feeling that pain, that discomfort. So when we do look at musculoskeletal injuries, MSIs, RSIs, repetitive strain injuries, these usually develop over time and range from short-term discomfort to potential lifetime injuries. Some of our common signs and symptoms of MSIs or RSIs are going to include pain, discomfort, weakness, fatigue, reduced range of motion, redness, burning sensations, or swelling. Now, before I move off this slide as well, I just want to take a few minutes. When we look at that pain, that discomfort, I definitely appreciate that some of these things we may be able to push through or work through, let's say. Maybe pain, maybe that is something that we just take some Advil or some pain medication, or some discomfort. Well, it's not a long period of discomfort, so I'm not going to focus a lot on it, or maybe it's not debilitating to my work or my job scope. But if I can speak from my own experience, I do live with some issues with my ankles and with my knees. Now, when we see pain and discomfort, again, I can push through a lot of that stuff. But what's very frustrating is some of our smaller tasks that do become painful or discomfort for me. I live in an area that I do have grocery stores and other facilities quite close to me. But a 2-block walk causes some implications for me. By the time I get home, that may just be a 10-minute walk down the road. Well, I'm icing my ankles after that. So again, these injuries, some of them may not appear to be as severe, but they can be very frustrating to experience or live with on a regular basis. So when we do look at those hazard assessments, it's not something that may hurt us today. What's going to hurt us tomorrow? What's going to hurt us 3 months from now, 3 years from now? So we want to be getting ahead of these injuries, these symptoms, these signs as much as possible. As mentioned, with our hazard assessments, we want to identify our tasks, everything that's going to be required to get that particular job done, what's included. Now, with those tasks, what are the hazards involved in those individual tasks? I strongly recommend that we are consulting or involving our end users or our employees, our workers in those tasks as well. They're the ones who are doing the work. They may know more of the specific hazards involved in that work. And then selecting and implementing specific controls and designating responsibilities. I usually recommend to designate the department, the team, the role over designating an individual person. And when we look at selecting and implementing our controls, I want to just highlight that when we do look at our controls, so the example we have up on our slide here is going to be for office administration work. This isn't the exhausted list. We're just using this as an example currently. When we look at those hazard controls, we have SWP, safe work practices, scheduling, SJP, safe job procedures. More often than not, these are our administrative controls. Why I want to highlight this, though, is that if we have this selected as a control, as a COR auditor, I'm then going to be verifying that the control is set in place. So if we are acknowledging, let's take a look at our static position there for a moment. Our control is an SWP, safe work practice, or an SJP, safe job procedure, and scheduling. Again, all administrative controls. If we were acknowledging that as a control, as a COR auditor, I'm then going to go take a look at that safe work practice or that safe job procedure. If we're acknowledging we have one for static positions, well, let's make sure that we are using one or that it is adapted to the work that we are doing. So again, with our hazard assessments, that's going to be the first piece in our COR audit that we're seeing specific ergonomic criteria. Have we identified the tasks revolving around some of our ergonomic concerns? Have we identified the hazards in those tasks? Have we selected, implemented controls, and have we designated those responsibilities? Stepping outside of a hazard assessment, now when we do look at our COR requirements, ongoing hazard assessments are a part of that audit. But sometimes we can also get a little creative. And I don't want to say that a comfort survey will replace a hazard assessment, but maybe we can do something other than just a hazard assessment as well. Now, when we see a comfort survey, this is just going to be a basic questionnaire on our worker job demand and give us a way to assess our biomechanics as well. What the survey will do essentially is give us a way to proactively get ahead of some of our MSI or RSI areas. Again, just a simple assessment to take a look at some of the demand, the job demand on our workers. If there is any discomfort, again, that's self-care versus post or active or aftercare. If we're already starting to experience some discomfort in the work we're doing, it's not going to be much longer until that discomfort potentially becomes an injury or starts causing complications for our roles, for our jobs. As well, looking outside of our hazard assessments, not that an ergonomic assessment or comfort survey will replace the need for hazard assessment, but some other things we can do to help identify some of our hazards or implement some controls. So again, just an example up here on the screen, but we're looking at a traffic control person and signage. So this assessment is going to help us identify our risk factors of musculoskeletal injuries or repetitive strain injuries. It will also allow us to establish some ways to identify, reduce, or eliminate those risks. Now, more in-depth ergonomic assessments can also include our work areas, our work design, our workstations. We could start looking at specific measurements to our body positioning around those workstations and those work environments. I recommend to do a little bit of research, take a look at some ergonomic assessments that are out there. If you do have access to any ergonomic specialist or occupational therapists, they can definitely give you a lot of advice around ergonomic assessments or may be able to conduct those assessments for you as well. When we look at our specific hazard controls, now we want to follow our hierarchy of controls. That's going to be a COR audit requirement as well. Our very first control and most effective Not always our most practical, unfortunately, but our most effective is going to be elimination. Can we eliminate the hazard altogether? But we got to get in there. We got to get the job done. We can't eliminate that hazard. What's next? Can we substitute a task, process, tool, equipment for a less hazardous process? Maybe the material that we are handling doesn't have proper handles on them. Can we use a different piece of equipment, or can we use a different boxing material that may have handles? That also closely relates into our engineered control, our design control. Can we build safety directly into the work, task, equipment that we're using? And then administration. We have an example up here for our power tool, ergonomic safe job procedure. When we saw that hazard assessment earlier, a lot of the controls that are on that hazard assessment example are going to be some administrative controls, safe work practices, safe job procedures, scheduling. And then our PPE, of course, always considered our last line of defense. Definitely not a one shoe fits all when it comes to PPE and our ergonomic controls. We'd have to best look at those tasks, those jobs, those processes, and what PPE may be required for them. When we look at implementing this program into our workforce, so our managers definitely have some roles to play, and our workers have some roles to play. We'll take a quick look at some of our management involvement, or some things that our management team can do to help us implement our ergonomic programs. So first one will be identifying musculoskeletal injuries or those repetitive strain injury risk factors in our workplace. Consulting with the employees and the end users, again, the people that are actually doing the work, using those equipment, using those tools. Developing and providing safe work procedures, whether that be safe work practices or safe job procedures. With COR auditing, we do look at management and employee worker development review of procedures. Can also develop schedules with those rest, those break periods, provide applicable training, and fitting the job to the employee, not the employee to the job. Easier said than done. I do appreciate that, but I feel our management team should be considering fitting the job to the employee and their capabilities, not the employee to the job. As well, evaluating those worker assessments, those surveys. If we are using comfort surveys, if we are conducting ergonomic assessments, well, let's actually review them. Let's do something with that information. Controlling the workload or pace. Again, 150-pound box a day may not be immediate cause for alarm, but picking up 10 50-pound boxes in an hour, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's going to add up. Right? Can we evaluate and provide appropriate lighting? That's not just for our office administration areas, maybe our warehouses, our storage areas. Where is work being done? Do we have appropriate lighting there? Provide equipment to assist with heavy or awkward loads. And then monitoring the effectiveness of our control measures. So once we select our controls, how are they working for us? When we look at our employee involvement, so protecting their own health and safety of that of other persons, wearing applicable PPE for that job, for that task, consider our body positioning within those tasks, and participating in our hazard or our ergonomic assessments. As well, following those safe work practices and procedures, not taking for granted that this is the way that I always do it. Doesn't mean that that's the right way. What is the procedure? What do we have established to get that task done? Participate in training and take that training seriously as well. Using the right tool for the job and reporting our MSI or RSI symptoms, again, to try to get ahead of them before they become an injury. Now, once we have all this established, how do we implement this on the individual level? That hazard identification, following those safe work practices, safe job procedures. We look at the specific task. What is that body position? Repetition of task, weight of the objects we're using, any tool vibration. The environment we're in, lighting, temperature, noise, clear, visible signage, flow of motion. Technology, which is growing very fast, I'm sure we're all aware of. Every day, my LinkedIn has new videos of PPE, training, monitoring, mechanical, robotics that are slowly coming into our workforces. And at that organizational level, providing, evaluating training, our hazard assessments, action plans, supervision, and following up on our controls and our assessments. We'll go over very quickly staying at work. Return to work is a component of COR auditing. I like to have the conversation around staying at work. Do we have the ability to keep our workers at work? Our back, our neck precautions. So repetitive bending, lifting limitations, sitting, standing, walking, repetitive neck movements, overhead activities. Shoulders as well, the repetitive shoulder movement, lifting limitations again. Tasks that are requiring us to reach above our shoulder or overhead activities, holding our arms outstretched for long periods of time. As well, our elbow, wrist, hands, so repetitive movements of the joint, gripping, vibration, our lifting, pushing, pulling, maintaining work surfaces at waist height. With our hips, knees, ankles, foot. So what's the repetitive movement if there are of joints? Walking on uneven ground, climbing ladders or stairs, sitting, standing, or kneeling. All things we want to consider when staying at work after an injury or returning to work after an injury. We'll just take a few moments here as well to talk about maintaining our program. So once it's procedures, scheduling, how do we maintain it? How do we keep it effective? So that top-down commitment, continuing to have top-down commitment from our senior management, supervisors, team leads. Continuing to identify hazards. Once we've identified a hazard, we're not done there. Any new change to process, equipment, tools, we need to redo those assessments. Analyzing our workplace assessment data, those comfort surveys, ergonomic assessments. Provide training in deficient areas. If we can highlight or identify deficient areas, can we then provide training, evaluate that training? And testing, improving on new ideas or processes. Sometimes we get a little creative, that's okay. We want to test, potentially improve on some of our new ideas or processes that are coming out. To finish off our presentation here today as well, we'll just we'll highlight some of our benefits of an effective program. Now again, strong leadership is always going to help with an effective program, but we should have fewer injuries, more productive workers. Ergonomics is about productivity. A happy, healthy workforce is a productive workforce. We see sustainable work practices. So our safe work practices, safe job procedures, have we thought of the sustainability, the longevity of the work that's being done with those processes? Workforce resilience, reduced absenteeism, increased savings, increased morale, which is very important, and our COR audit requirements, of course. Lastly, I always instruct anybody to take a look at some of our resources, whether that be through our website, constructionsafetyns.ca. WCB Nova Scotia, of course, has lots of resources around ergonomics in our workplaces, and Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety is a valued resource as well. Outside of that, I want to thank everybody for coming into our presentation today. We're just about at the 12:30 mark. If there are any questions, I'll try my best to answer that. Please feel free to reach out to our organization at any time. I can always be reached as well at c.creaser@constructionsafetyns.ca. You can always give me a call at 902-789-7888. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll stay on here just for a quick moment in case there's any questions that I can answer. I may have my camera off just for a moment, though. Thank you. Okay, well, once more, thank you very much for attending, everybody. Really appreciate your time today. Please feel free to reach out to Construction Safety Nova Scotia or myself directly if there's anything we can ever do to assist you with COR auditing, with your ergonomic programs as well. Thanks again. Bye now.